What's up, guys, and welcome to the pod. Today, I'm sitting down with Adrienne as we talk about tryouts, how stressed we are, how excited we are, if athletes are trying to move up every single year. We're gonna talk about athletes switching gyms. So tune in and let's just get it started.
Check 1 2, check 1 2, 1 2.
Okay. What's up?
What's up?
Not much. Excited, getting going. So are you excited for tryouts?
I am super excited for tryouts. I've been thinking about tryouts really, I feel like, since NCAA. And I think that once we start competing and you get into the heat of national season and you look back and you kind of think about things that you did really well and things you could have done better. And I think once national season starts to wrap up around NCAA summit time, like it's all you look forward to is like for the next season.
Yeah, I feel like once NCAA is over, it's this like weird couple of months until your next competition because you're hitting it so hard, like almost competing every single weekend. You're out of town, you're traveling. It's like Palm Springs, cheer sport, like ACA, then NCAA, and then it's like nothing for like 2 months.
And it's even one of those things where it's like, even if you're not competing, there's competitions going on. So you're like keeping up with UCA or you're keeping up with USA Nationals.
It's honestly just such a busy time. And it's so hectic, and then everything just calms down. And then it's like Summit and D2 Summit and Youth Summit and D1 Summit and Worlds all hits. But the crazy part is it's like the season really never has a break.
No.
Because back in the day, I felt like it used to have this like a month to get ready for tryouts.
Yes, I
And
do
now
remember
when they
that.
added Summit, it's like some people are trying out before they even go to Summit.
Yeah, there are a lot of programs that I know that just even like small gyms that have their tryouts. I know some that have them this weekend and next weekend where it's like, you
That's
really
what's
have an
super
overlap.
Crazy. Or you literally get back and it's literally time for tryouts the next weekend.
It's so crazy.
Because it isn't
comes
like
so
that for
fast.
us.
Yeah, so ours Summit is May 11th, I think, and then our tryouts are May 18th and 19th. It's literally the week we get back.
Yeah, no, it's so crazy. I feel like all we've been doing is like prepping for tryouts, and it's just so insane how fast it comes up. I mean, do you feel like you're approaching tryouts differently this year? Not necessarily like as a program, but like your state of mind of what you're looking for?
Yes, and I think a lot of that is attributed to the changes in the score sheet because I think this goes for most coaches too, is like where in the past you're looking for all these specialty passes, but I think this year one thing that I'm being really strict about just in my head is looking for the perfection and like the simple passes because that's like what we compete now and that's what you need. So I think it's one of those things where instead of looking for like aerials and punch, we talk about this all the time, like instead of aerials and punch fronts and all this crazy stuff for level 3, like can you do a good tuck?
Well, that's what's crazy. It's because I felt like this year we were competing and we started off trying to put in the front walkover aerials and all the specialty passes that were specialty passes and counted for something. And then we were getting outscored and beat by teams doing simpler passes and just hitting the execution better. So I think there's still always room in your routine for those specialty passes, but you're right. I think that looking for the cleaner, basic elite passes that when a round off back hamstring layout is considered elite now, like why even try to force your team to do squad whip layouts?
Especially when it's like, we had that incident last year where it's like that whip tuck caused us an injury and it's like, why push those really hard passes when you can do the basic pass and be done?
I think for me this year, it's really looking at, we talk about like that cheer experience and that cheer IQ. I think it's more important, almost like a job on your resume, and what most gyms and most people do that anyways, but really more than ever, like looking at what team were you on last year and the year before? Because when the tumbling isn't as difficult as it used to be, it's more about seeing, can you do the simple passes cleaner? Can you stunt? Do you have the experience? Because if you're going from level 2 to level 3 to level 4 to level 5 every year, jumping up a level, you're literally relearning how to stunt in pyramid every single year at a new level.
And that's so hard because I read something the other day and I actually love this saying, but it said, an athlete is truly ready to move up when they have nothing else to learn in that level. And 100%. I loved that because obviously tumbling comes so naturally to some kids and you can tumble on your own. But I think with our stunt difficulty now being at a 4.5 instead of at a 4 like it was last year, like that experience is huge. So like you could be on level 3 and for example, like Mavericks do a lot of twisting skills, but we don't do a lot of release moves. So it's like that could be something that they do next year that those kids that repeat are going to learn all of those level 3 skills before they move up.
Because I think it's so crazy because I remember back in the day, like 10 years ago, you weren't even cheering yet. But back in the day, like kids would just try out with skills. And if you had the layout, whether you were a gymnast and never cheered before, they'd like put you on the level 4 team. But cheerleading has just gotten so hard that I'm telling you, sometimes I feel like it has just changed so much. If you go watch Worlds in like 2006, I mean, the stunts we were doing then seem so easy now because there's level 3 teams doing
that do the world stunts
literally
from back
it's just gotten so hard that your experience is so important for the team that you're on. If not, you're literally just learning a new level every single year and competing against teams, because I know there are teams, and we've coached these teams, where kids have been on these teams for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and that builds your strongest athletes too. And it's so funny too, because even, I mean, cheerleading's so new. You watch the evolution of the sport where it started. You made the level if you had the tumbling, and then you made the level if you had this stunning and flying experience. And it's like now they're adding that third element of all-star experience. Anyways, like I made a level 5 team with a full. I learned like 3 weeks of 4, and it was like I was learning how to fly and base and learning how to do routine. That was my first year of all-star. I was on level 5.
Do you feel like kids now are like expecting to level up every single year?
I don't think so. I think sometimes when you first start cheer, you almost expect it because everything else in your life is like that, where it's like you spend a year here and then you move up to 2nd grade and then 3rd grade. And I think once you get more experienced in cheer, you start to realize that you don't level up as much as you should, or as much as you think you will.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing when you said once you get experience, because I think it depends on the culture of the program. And if your program is, you know, you always hear like, oh, this program holds kids back.
Yeah.
And it's like, they don't hold kids back. They're placing teams appropriately. They're placing teams according to the experience of their kids. Just because you did level 2 for 1 year doesn't mean you're ready for level 3 just because you have a tuck, because you might not have been in all the stunts. You might not have level, like, are you a level 3 jumper?
Yes.
Are you level 3 base? Are you level 3 flyer? Do you have the skills? Is your performance level 3? Because a lot of times kids want to move up, but they get such a bad rap, a lot of these programs, for holding kids back. I just think they're literally placing them where they should be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's something that I love that we say this, is that if you're going to fly, if you're going to learn how to fly, but you're level 4 tumbling, like you're not going to start to learn how to fly on level 4. Like you might be a level 4 or 5 or 6 tumbler, but you're a level 0 flyer. You've never done it. An all-star. Like, and I think that's huge. It's funny you say the holding kids back, because so my aunt actually made that comment one time, and she lives across the country, and we were talking on the phone, and she was like, well, I heard like just around the bush that y'all like hold your kids back and you don't let them compete the level that they can tumble. And I kind of went into that spiel of like, your tumbling level does not equate. It is not the same thing as your cheerleading level.
No, not at all. Because tumbling is literally just one part of it, and the way the score sheet is changing, it's not even the biggest part of it anymore.
It's not.
I mean, stunting kind of always has been in general, but I just think that, I don't know, I think it might just be the culture of certain programs, but I do think that kids now, I don't know if they're getting bored. I don't know if it's like the whole TikTok trend where attention span is shorter. I'm not sure. True. But it's like every single year, they just want to move up levels, and they don't realize that that's just not how it works. And these kids on these worlds teams, you see the post every year on Facebook. Some mom will share it, and it'll be like, my cheer journey, mini 1, mini 2, youth 2, junior 3, senior 3, 4. Now I'm on this world team that's competing at the
10
highest
years
level.
later.
Yeah. And I think that I watch this a lot. I think where a lot of kids want to move up. If they don't move up, then they threaten to go to another gym, or they threaten to not do it. And then they usually end up doing it anyways, honestly. Or if they do switch to another gym, they do it for a year, realize they either didn't move up or didn't enjoy it. And it was such a hard year for them that they end up quitting the sport. And I think that's one thing I've been saying a lot in these parent meetings, is that a lot of parents don't realize that we're trying to do right by their kids and make sure that we're placing them on a team where they're going to be successful and going to be able to be a part of every single section. Because so many kids, there's nothing worse that you can do to a kid, put them on a team where they're not going to do anything but dance.
Yeah, exactly.
And still be in the back of the dance anyways, because they're not the best performer.
Well, and then you're basically losing out on a whole year of cheer experience because you didn't get to do anything in your routine. So like you got the glory of saying you moved up, but then you didn't do anything anyway.
Yeah, there's so many kids we watch that make teams because they want to move up, but then there are no sections. And then they wonder why they're not getting better. They wonder why they don't have such a great experience.
Yes.
So it's always, I feel like coaches aren't holding people back. They're just trying to do right by the kid to put them on the team where they're going to actually contribute to the team.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to
and
me
I
when
think
parents want to be the weakest link, their kid to be the weakest link on the
yeah.
team just to say they moved up.
And then I think the question arises of you get these parents that are kind of on the borderline of, do I want to move up? Like, should I stay? And then I think it goes into the conversation of, well, do you want to move up or do you want to be competitive? Because you can't have both. Like, you can't move up every year and be competitive.
I see that post every year where it's like, do you want to move up levels or do you want to win Summit?
Yep.
And I think we talked about this the other day where it's like, cheerleading is so hard and so many random gyms are getting so good all of a sudden out of nowhere. Gyms I've never heard of scoring 98s and 99s. And I think I'm so used to some of my friends' gyms dominating and going to NCAA and Summit and sweeping it. And they're walking away with not nearly as many wins as they used to. Not saying they're random. Gyms you came out of nowhere.
Well, you figure it out. I mean, you figure out how to, the score sheet's the score sheet. They tell you what to do. So, I mean, you just figure out how to get better. And I think as coaches and athletes and gyms and everybody evolves, everybody has to get better or you're left in the dust.
Well, that's the thing. I think people don't realize, like, you know, you see a lot of those complaints too where like prep isn't what prep used to be, but all-star cheerleading just isn't in general.
No.
I mean, D2 gyms aren't in general. I mean, 2016, 2017, I won senior 4 with a 90. You score a 90 now, you're in 48th place. I mean, that's just not going to happen anymore. And I think that, think about even our youth 3. The first year we won in D2 was like a 93. We scored a 98-4 this year and people were still on our tail.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just getting so much deeper and so much harder. I mean, even Mavericks in our youth 3, there's 36 in small youth 3. Last year there was like 5.
Yeah, I think we were literally against 3 last year. We were first
So
in
it's
3.
just getting so much harder and parents need to understand that, like, as the sport develops and as it gets more competitive, no one's holding your kids back. We're just having to place appropriately because gone are the days of being competitive with kids just now learning skills. You shouldn't be working on your tumbling, working on your jumps, or learning to base on a new level every single year.
No, and it's also unfair to those kids too, because it's like, if you do go out of town for the summer, or you do go out of this, it's like you're missing out on all of those like learning opportunities where you're supposed to be literally learning a whole new level of stunting. Well, how are you going to learn if you're not there? Yeah. So it's like, even just repeating that, you can just pick back up of where you left off. Not saying that you shouldn't ever move up. Obviously, that's not what we're trying to say at all. But I think it's one of those things where you have to learn as much as you can before you can try and make that jump.
And that's why a lot of athletes, I think, repeat levels because they master stunting level 2 and get really good at it. And they're beasts before they go to level 3 and learn. Because if your entire team constantly moves up, then your whole team is learning altogether. I think it's different when you have 80% of your team is a returning team, and then there's that 20% that can handle it and is learning. There's a big difference between 80% of your team is new to this level.
Yes, or new to elite in general. Because you can have kids that jump from prep to elite. Like, I think going from prep level 2 to elite level 2, that's a jump in itself.
Yes, that's where a lot of people don't understand. They think they were on prep level 2, so they're ready for elite level 3.
But that score sheet is so different.
And it's just not the same ballpark, right?
No,
like youth 2 prep isn't small youth 2, D1 or D2. No. It's so different. It's so much more competitive that literally moving from youth 2 prep, a lot of programs I know will go youth 2 prep to youth 1 elite.
Yeah.
Well, they won't even put you at youth 2 elite because it is so much different in the requirement and your execution of your technique, of your skills is so much harder. It's a longer routine. It's way more fast paced and it's way more competitive.
Well, and that's also too where I think people see these teams where kids repeat for 3 and 4 years and they're almost like, well, that's not fair. Those kids have been on the team for 3 years. And it's like, well, you can also be in that spot, but you wanted to move up. So it's kind of like you said, do you want to win Summit or do you want to be competitive?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think it's just a matter of making sure you are putting the most experienced kids on your team that can handle that level because it is so different to do a tuck in a private lesson or open gym. But once you add jumps, once you add stunning, performance, the nerves, the lights, it's so different. And then in a group of tumbling with 5 or 6 other people having to be on count with them is so different than you doing it in your private lesson with Coach.
Yeah, I mean, we see it all the time where the most talented tumblers end up getting taken out of sections because they can't tumble on count or their feet aren't together when we need them to be together in a full out. Like that's 100%. When it counts is when you're doing your routines. That's what we train for.
Yeah, no, 100%. Do you feel like tryouts are more stressful now than they used to be because the degree of difficulty is so much higher?
Um,
My mom's
I don't know if they're necessarily more stressful, because I feel like tryouts for kids are stressful no matter what sport you do, no matter where you're trying out.
100%.
I feel like they're stressful regardless. I don't know. I feel like if I was a kid trying out now, I would be stressed just with the air of tryouts, but almost, I feel like you kind of know where you're going to go before you try out. I think
what I've noticed, obviously, as the sport has developed, and I've noticed with all the programs in our area and just on social media, that everybody is really trying to host these like evaluation clinics, these tryout clinics, trying to get everybody more aware of where they really are. And I think that there's more communication of expectations for the program, expectations for what skills you need to make these teams. Yeah. So I think people are getting a better understanding of,
there's just a lot less surprise.
I might not be a level 2.
Yeah. So I feel like it's one of those things where you walk in and you're nervous just because it's tryouts, but I feel like you said there's so much prep and so much communication that it's almost like not a surprise. Like I feel like people don't get their team placements and they're like, what? Because there's so much given beforehand that it's like you either should know or it should have been communicated to you that you kind of know where you're going to go or end up anyways.
Right. Yeah. I think, and like I said, I've noticed a lot of programs are all hosting these like tryout evaluation clinics, trying to get kids in the door early so they're not so upset. Because I think the one thing that no program likes is sending out the email, you made youth level 2 and nobody accepts.
Yes.
And then people, it's just messing everything up because people across the board aren't accepting and they're upset and they felt like they should have been on this team or that team. I think that everybody's done a good job of, you know, I've seen a bunch of gyms post like, these are the skills you need to make this level. Yeah. This is the tumbling passes, the jump passes. A lot of programs do the mini routines. So you know as an athlete, if you can't get through the mini routine,
you're probably not making that level.
Yeah, you probably can't handle the level. So I think that that's really, really good. And I feel like it's still stressful, but I think people have more real expectations.
Yeah, oh no, for sure.
Going into it.
And I think like we talked about, as people get more experienced in cheerleading, because obviously the longer that cheerleading exists, the longer that people are involved in the sport. So you kind of know where you're going because your cheer experience just gets wider. So if you're on junior level 3 for the first time, you're probably like, okay, I'm probably going to stay here. So you try out more for the formality of it than really to like see where you're going. It's not a surprise.
No, 100%. Yeah, I think that most people, I mean, you're always going to have your families that are super upset because they didn't make the level.
No matter what.
A lot of times the families don't know and they just know their kid wants to be on level 4 with the rest of their friends and they don't get it. And that's always going to happen. But I think for the most part, you know, from what I hear from my friends at other programs, like everyone's really trying to do their best to put out that information. Now, whether the kid and the family doesn't want to hear it or they don't want to see it,
it's there.
I think it is good. Yeah, I think it's hard. But you know, one thing I do think is hard, that with this new day and age with social media, I think that so many kids are so concerned about the level because their friends are moving up. Yeah. And that makes it really difficult to accept not moving up. And so people either just quit or switch to a different program.
Well, I think it's just very like the middle school effect. Like everybody's doing it but me, mom. Everybody has this but me, mom. And it seems very like that in the all-star world, but it's not. I mean, I think even this year we had a lot of people that like repeated teams and were almost surprised to be like, oh, you guys are on the team with me again too. Oh, you're here. And so I think it happens more often than people like to think of, like repeating teams or ending up where they didn't want to be, but it's where they're best placed.
I think a lot of times just so people see their friends moving up.
Yes.
And so they think they have to move up because their friend and their grade moved up. And it's just so hard because I think cheer is so beautiful because there's a senior 1 team.
Yeah.
There's a place for everybody.
Yes.
And no matter what your level is, you're still getting to do the sport that you love. And it's not just about your level. It's about being on a competitive team, learning those life lessons, and being able to do what we love to do. And I know it's tough when you see some of your friends moving up, but it's the same experience.
Yeah, everybody
You're still doing
competes.
cheerleading. You're still competing at NCA. You're still going to these comps. So it's still so much fun. I think once people can remove the shock factor of, oh my God, my friend moved up and I didn't. And if they can get through those first few weeks of practices, they end up loving it anyways. Because it is, what I love about All-Star Cheer is that you get to make new friends and people you don't go to school with, and you get to find a new home. I mean, people I cheered with, I didn't know from home.
Yeah.
I didn't know from Arlington. I didn't go to school with them. It was a whole new walk of life of people I got to meet that became my lifelong friends. I mean, my best friend Courtney I met her at cheer. I didn't know her from Arlington. She was from like Benbrook or something.
Well, then I also think you like you talk about, you have like your cheer friends and you have your school friends. And if you're getting in a tiff with your school friends, you don't have to see them at cheer.
100%.
Because it's a whole different group of people. And so that's nice too. And like you said, like once you post pictures in your uniform and you post your awards, I doubt any comments are going to be like, well, what level did you make this year? Because they're just happy for you. Like if they're real friends, they're going to be happy for you anyways.
I think if you can, like I said, if you can get past the first month of practices, first few weeks.
It wears off.
It's like buying a new car.
Yeah.
It's super hot at first. And then after a while, you're just like, I'm stuck with this payment.
Except for it's a little opposite because the car, you're stuck with the payment, but cheer, you end up liking it a lot more.
Yeah, everyone
so
ends up loving it. And that's the thing, though. I think a lot of times I see the kids that don't have the best experience are because it was so hard for them.
Yeah.
It was such a stressful environment where they didn't have the skills. They didn't have the studying experience. They're not in all the sections.
Yeah.
So now they're just always getting charged up at practice.
Yeah. Well, and then, it's always better. I mean, even it doesn't happen super often, but like sometimes you'll see kids level down because they need to learn how to base or they need to learn how to fly or maybe their tumbling just isn't quite where it needs to be for the level they were previously on. And it's way better to see those kids shine because it's like, you get to be front and center of your level 2 routine instead of forcing level 3. Or you get to be a rock star in your level 3 routine instead of forcing level 4 where you're going to be back right corner against these teams that have been on this team for 2 and 3 years.
No, 100%. 100%. Okay, so now to like what is obviously the hottest topic. You see it in all the coaches' pages. Do you feel like kids are switching gyms just more nowadays?
No. I feel like
you don't think so?
No, I don't think so because I think that you hear about it a lot more because of social media and because of like phones and stuff. But I think it's one of those things where it just seems like a big deal because it's like made very known.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of people are switching.
Athletes switching gyms is always going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I think people just want to try something new. And like we said, if they don't make the level they want to make, they can, when you're in an area, especially like us in Dallas or Houston or
Texas in general.
California. I mean, these hot spots with a lot of really good cheer programs. It's so easy to say, you're not going to put me on level 2. The gym down the street will.
Yeah.
And so then they go. But I think what a lot of people, from my experience, I've seen get really wrapped up in the other program when in reality, they just need to really focus on their program.
You're talking about programs within themselves, right?
Yes. I think that if more programs focused on their experience they're giving their customers in their gym and their families in their gyms, not saying that's not going to keep people from leaving because you can't always make everybody happy. But I do think that I see a lot of programs and a lot of friends of mine that get lost in the sauce of this program is stealing our kids and not really focusing on how to keep their own kids.
Yes.
And I think that's the bigger thing.
Yeah, I think that that's a really big issue in terms of, and I think that's an internal gym issue because you've got to give your kids the experience that they want to stay.
Right.
So not because you're losing 20 and 30 kids. If you lose, like you said, one or two here or there, but just for different reasons that happens. But instead of complaining about it, like figure out what's going to keep your kids and keep your people happy. Because every gym has to offer something different or else we'd all be the same.
Yeah. And I think one thing that people don't realize is that like when someone switches to another gym, it's not necessarily because you did something wrong. No. It's just sometimes they want to try something different. Sometimes they've just been at the same gym for 5 years with the same coaches and they just want to mix it up. Or they might have a good Judy and a friend that's over there on that team or a family that they know and they want to try it. And I think if you keep that door open and you keep good relationships with those families, they're liable to come back.
Yeah.
Or at the end of the day, at least they leave on good terms. I do think that there's a proper way to leave a program that's been good to you. I think letting those, what my biggest pet peeve, and I speak for myself, is when athletes try out like at 3 gyms.
Oh yeah. Well,
That's
then it's hard
crazy
because
to
no
me.
gym can place their teams.
Absolutely. I think that's so crazy and honestly a little shady to me.
Yeah.
When you try it at 3 different gyms to see what team is going to be the best team that you make, because you burn the bridge with the other gyms that you don't pick.
Yes.
Because they're counting on you. They're placing their team with you on it. They're saving a spot. They're taking away a spot.
From somebody else.
You're trying out and taking somebody else's spot for you to say, ooh, never mind. We got a better deal over here.
Yes.
And I think that's why a lot of programs I've seen start taking a lot of the upfront money for uniforms and music.
So that if you
Because
leave,
it really is so hard when you just try it at 3 gyms and really mess up 2 team placements at
yes.
2 other programs. But no, I mean, I think you're right. I don't think that there's more kids switching gyms. I just think because of social media, people see it more, and because of Facebook and Twitter and all those things. But I do think that I think there's a right way to do it. I think
Yes.
there's a respectful way to do it. I think that sitting down with your coaches and your gym owner and being like, hey, look,
Yeah.
even if there is something wrong or you didn't enjoy your experience, I always think that's good to tell them. But if not, if you just want to switch because your daughter's best friend goes there, I think it's okay for those parents to be like, hey, look, we've loved our experience here. So-and-so's best friend is there, or hey, we just want to try something different.
Yeah. And I mean, people appreciate feedback, good or bad, because like you said, like if there's an explanation, most of the time people are pretty understanding. I mean, humans are humans. They're going to be like, okay, that makes sense. Or if it's because of a negative reason and you let them know, then they can really try and adjust and fix it. And I think that that's something that people underestimate, is just having that conversation with your gym owners or your coaches, just to give them that heads up. Because like you said, if not, it just messes up everyone's team placements. And you're sitting in limbo now, waiting between 3 different gyms, and they're also sitting in limbo, reserving spots for kids.
Because I've been at different programs, and we've had athletes that have left the program, and the parents have just been straight up like, hey, look, she just wants to try something different. And for me, it was like, I totally understand that, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was the kid that went, I think the difference is too, I was the kid when I was 15, 16 years old that left my small program because I outgrew it, and went to a different program because they didn't have a level for me. So I went to a different program. And my coaches that I adored hated me, wouldn't say hi to me at competitions, wouldn't talk to me, ignored me. And it was just so crushing. I remember telling myself I would never do that to an athlete, that if someone tells us, hey, we want to try something different, then I wish you the best. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe anybody anything. And I think it's your money, it's your family. If you respectfully want to try something different, that's totally up to you. And even then, if you didn't love your experience, I mean, you should always have that choice, right? Like AT&T doesn't call me and yell at me when I switch to T-Mobile. Now, they might try to keep me, and they ask for some feedback, but I'm not going to get charged up by someone at AT&T because I switched to T-Mobile.
Well, and at the end of the day, too, they're still kids. Like, I mean, kids here, that program, next program number 4, they're still going to look up to you. You still were their coach. You still were a big part of their lives for however many years. Like, they're still kids. So like they look up to you as their role model. And I think if I looked up to someone as a role model and I just felt like they hated me, it would really just crush my soul, I feel like.
Oh, 100%. But again, like I said, I think for the parents, obviously, there's a right way to do it, and especially if the programs have been good to you.
Yes.
If you grew up at that program, you've been there for 5 or 6 years, they've treated you well, even if you've been there for 1 year, I think it's really respectful to be like, hey, listen, we're trying. And we've had kids that have done that have been like, hey, look, we're going to try out this program, and we're going to try out here.
Yep.
And, don't save us a spot, but she's trying to make this team. And I think that's the most respectful way to do that, because you're just being straight up about it. And again, I only speak for us, I guess. You know what I mean? Other programs might charge you up if you tell them that. But I feel like I can speak for us and our program that we would always respectfully be like, totally understand. Thank you for telling us. And we do wish you the best. And if it doesn't work out, please come back.
Yeah, because that's the thing too, is it's like, if you don't really get what you want at maybe somewhere else that you're looking, just because we don't reserve a spot for you doesn't mean that we won't have a spot for you in the future. Like, come back, 100%. Work out with the team. Like, we'll see if we can make it work. Because obviously 100%. We want to keep all of our kids that have grown up with us.
Yeah, no, I know, I get it. That's, I think, the most stressful part to me is that I think when it comes back to tryouts and doing tryouts, I love tryouts because I feel like that's the time where you get it wrong or you get it right.
Yep.
If you don't place your teams properly, you're toast from day one.
That determines your whole year.
You got to place the teams properly. But I do always get a little bit of anxiety of certain athletes that I'm like, are they trying out somewhere else also?
Yes.
Because we've always had that happen. Where we're like, oh, saving so-and-so a spot. And then you're like, oh, I'm so excited about her. And then you get the call from your friend at the other program that's like, ooh, one of your kids just tried out.
Yeah. And it just almost makes you sad. Like, you're like, oh man, I thought we were really good to you. Like, I thought we've had a conversation. Because even if it's not like convincing you to stay, it's more of like a heads up just would have been nice.
And I totally get it. Like I said, no one owes us anything. They don't owe us a conversation. But I don't know. I think that most coaches and programs try to be really transparent and wish people the best. So I just think it's respectful. But I do always get a little bit of anxiety at tryouts, like thinking, is she not gonna try out?
Yeah.
Or is she trying out here and somewhere else? Because the rumor mill is always going.
Yes.
And you get the moms riled up and they're like, I heard so-and-so was over at so-and-so's gym.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't know what to do with that.
And you never know who to trust, and you never really get the story
you can only
straight.
you can only place your teams and go off what they say. But it is always stressful. That's the part I don't love.
Yes.
And then sometimes when it's like, are they going to accept their position?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do a good job of trying to make those phone calls. And I know a lot of other programs too beforehand because they can fill out, we won't accept level 2 and stuff. But sometimes you're just like, God, I hope they take it.
Yeah,
the
like,
worst
really
is when
love
they're
to
like,
have
give
you.
me a few days to think about it.
And you're like, oh gosh,
my
we
God, I
got
have
a few days.
We got to announce tryouts.
Team announces are tomorrow. I can't learn next week. Yeah, that's really tough.
I think overall, I think it's going to be fine overall, and it always is fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's always things you could have done better, and there's a couple of different positions you wish and shots calls you wish you would have made. It doesn't always go perfect, but yeah, it's hard. I mean, because you're so stressed with these end of the year events, World Summit, Youth Summit, all those things.
It just comes so fast.
And then it's tryouts, and it's just like.
And I think it's like you said, like I think that just becomes a bigger deal because of social media. So you see a kid post a photo in like a different, and you're kind of like, that would have been nice to know.
It is always super weird.
Yes.
You know what is weird?
Yes.
It is always super weird when you see your kids in different uniforms.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
What's
it's like,
that?
it's not like sad. It's just kind of like, oh man, like I miss you.
Yeah,
I miss coaching you.
I don't want to say it's not sad. I just think it's super weird.
It's like kind of bittersweet. You're happy for them. Like you're happy you're doing well, or
it's
they're
like when
loving
your ex
it.
posts a picture with the new person,
Yeah.
and you're like, dang, that used to be me.
You're like, oh
That's
man.
awkward.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But no, I think it's good.
It's like, I'm happy you're happy, but like I do miss you, and I do miss coaching you.
But at the end of the day, you know, these kids still stay in classes and private lessons, so you still get to be a part of these families' lives and get to cheer them on. You know what I mean? There's so many athletes that we used to coach, you know, at our previous gyms that have gone on to be at different programs, and they're still shining and killing it. And if you keep those good relationships with those families, like you still feel a part of that because you are really a part of that because you help them get there.
And it's cool to see them at competitions and like literally cheer them on, like watch them at NCAA and watch them. And like the parents still come up and talk to us all the time.
Oh,
and
I'm
like,
always, I
here's
know
an
you
update.
are too, but like we're always everybody's biggest fans.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm always going to be your biggest fans because like we've always said, we build those relationships with the families and not with uniforms. And I think that it's more than just the uniform. It's more about what we put out there. It's more about, you know, building that relationship with that family to give these families the best experience, to be the best they can be. Because I had so many coaches that poured into me that literally made me who I am today and made me the coach I wanted to be. So being able to do that for athletes is so cool. And I think I always hate it. I mean, I always hate it when coaches write kids off when they switch gyms.
What?
If they do it respectfully, you gotta cheer them on, man. You were that kid one time. And maybe you stayed at your gym forever and good for you, I guess. But even as an adult, if you switch jobs or you switch gyms, right? Coaches switch gyms.
Yes.
And you hope and everybody supports you, right? Adults and people switch law firms. People switch from Geico Insurance to Progressive.
Change. Like people change, period. All in life, all throughout life. Like the most you can do is cheer people on. And also just, like you said, building that good relationship. When you can go and cheer those kids on, well, then you're also not avoiding people at competitions. You're like, oh, I don't like that kid because they switched. Can't talk to them. Can't go that way. Don't like that family. It's just keeping that open relationship.
Switching.
Yeah.
And it's at the end of the day, it's just cheerleading. I think that's the main thing. You know, literally the word cheer is in cheerleading. And we're supposed to bring joy to people and we're supposed to cheer people on. And it's supposed to be fun.
Yes.
I understand it's a business and I understand all those things. Like when people switch private lessons, you're like salty about it. But everybody is, right? That's always the beef in the gym, right? Oh my gosh, she switched from me to Bob.
Why are you taking lessons with RaulD now?
Yeah, literally, always. But at the end of the day, it's got to be more than just that. And it's about the families and cheering everybody on and wishing them the best.
Well,
you know
it keeps
what I mean?
it fun. Like I could not imagine going to competition and just like having so much hatred in my heart. Like I love seeing everybody, no matter what uniform they're in.
Yeah,
like, I love seeing all the kids.
Well, that's what I love seeing every time I see all my coaching friends. I'm like, it's like a high school reunion.
Yes, always.
It's like you get to see everybody from out of town, and it's weird. You see these coaches from other programs, and you feel like you have this huge connection, like Matt from ASR.
Yes.
But it's like, I really don't know you except when we see each other at competitions, but I love him so much.
And like the
Shout out, Matt.
parents don't really get to experience this, or like spectators in general, but like the most fun is the warm-up room. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at that team over there. That is a kid I used to coach. Look, that's my coaching friend. And the kids, it's funny, they always make comments of like, y'all know everyone, as because we're walking by all the teams and we're like, hey.
It's because it's literally more than cheerleading, and these gym owners and these coaches that you meet, they become a part of your extended family, and it just becomes a part of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what cheerleading is makes it so beautiful, is that we have adopted so many family friends.
Yeah.
And so many parents and athletes and coaches and gym owners that are just a true part of your life forever.
Yeah.
And it's like so cool.
Well, it's cool too, because coach, owner, parent, kid, like y'all are everyone's bonded by competitive cheerleading, which is such a specific sport that, no matter where people are, you know exactly what they're doing, and you know what they're going through, and you know how they feel, and you can almost relate to it no matter where people are at, because it's
its own world. And I think a lot of athletes don't get that, because when they stop doing it, they always miss it.
Always miss it. It's
I mean, people always say like cheerleading is like the mafia.
Yeah,
like you can't get out of it.
You can't leave.
Like no matter how hard,
we're still here.
Think about Courtney. She doesn't even, our best friend Courtney doesn't even coach cheerleading anymore. Yes. But she comes to like every competition,
right?
Comes to NCAA. She has like a real job, 2 kids, a husband, and a family.
And she hasn't been coaching in what, 2 to 3 years?
It's like the mafia.
It sucks you in. It's so infectious, and it's so fun. And
it's just such a beautiful thing.
I mean, most coaches grew up as athletes, so they're just kind of pouring what they learned into their athletes now. And so everyone kind of bonds about just this sport that is so crazy and fun.
And I think that's the thing. Once you get through the tryouts, you get back to the part you love.
Yeah.
And you get back to, once the anxiety is gone, you made your teams, the kids have switched gyms if they're switching gyms. You've got new kids at your gyms from different programs.
Yep.
And it is just like, let's start grinding
once
for the
it
competitions.
settles,
One thing I've
great.
learned this year, and I've loved it so much, is being able to compete against really, really good programs. And even if you lose, like we've had a hard time, obviously, with United. They're so good.
Shout out.
But even if you lose to Dawson and Trevor and Kayla and Amber, it's so fun because you love them so much. So you know they're pouring their heart into their stuff just like we are. And it's just awesome.
Or like, it was so awesome to see like Techstar win NCAA Junior 3.
David,
like that was so awesome. Like we were so happy for them. It was like, I can't even be mad at third. Like y'all are awesome. You did great. We're friends.
Because everybody's doing, in the moment you're a little bitter, but when you see them enjoying that moment and living their dream, you're like, man, I'm so happy that happened for you.
Yeah.
Because we'll get our moment again, and our kids get their moment again. And so it's just cool to be a part of something bigger than you that brings so much joy to everybody. I couldn't imagine leaving it.
Well, and that's something that's also a reason why I love some of those younger teams so much, is because you have those kids that have never done this, and you're like, just wait till we start competing. You'll never leave.
Well, it's crazy. You start seeing some of these kids that like just try it.
Oh, yeah.
And then they get hooked. And they can't leave, and they want to level up, and they want to be on more teams, and they just want to make cheerleading their life.
Yeah. And that's when you get those phone calls that are like, all right, my daughter's super serious. We're super committed. And you're like, yes, that's exactly what I want to hear.
And then they miss every other practice.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
But no, I totally get that. But yeah, cheer's awesome. But this season's going to be great. I'm super excited for it. I'm ready to get through Summit. I'm ready to get through tryouts, because I get excited just to see my new teams and start grinding it out in the summer.
Yeah. Well, it's always good. One thing I'm so excited for this choreography, because we're going to actually see our whole team.
Yeah.
So like, that'll be cool.
But I'm excited for this next year. I think it's going to be fired up. And I think that I hope everyone has a good tryout this year. I really hope everyone kills it. And I hope everyone tries out again.
Yeah.
I hope people stay and cheer, because it's so awesome. And if you don't, you're going to miss it.
And we'll miss you.
Cheer will miss you, even if you're not in our program. Cheer's going to miss you. So don't quit, guys.
Don't quit.
All right, boys.
Bye.
Bye, guys. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was so fun.